With Dragonflight now being only 1 month away, we are starting to see Blizzard really hone in on small adjustments to tuning and bug fixes. So I figured this would be a better time than ever to actually give my latest impressions on how some of my favorites are doing. I wanted to walk through my second impressions of the talent tree for each class and their overall performance. In this video, we're going to focus primarily on the Protection Paladin, a tank which has been a topic of much controversy in the community. In my opinion, this tank feels fabulous and has great potential, a dark horse if you will. I'm excited to dive into this one. Obviously, this is still beta and there are still a ton of possibilities for change, so that's something that we need to keep in mind. I plan on rolling out videos for each and every tank, so if that's something that interests you, feel free to subscribe. It's free after all. Let's dive in. Looking at a fresh tree, we can see that we're automatically given Lay on Hands and Devotion Aura, already leading into the notion that we're a beacon of aid for our group. Similar to every other tree in existence, we need to spend a handful of points to unlock the next tier. In this area of the tree, we see a lot of classic abilities like Blessing of Freedom, Hammer of Wrath, Greater Judgment, and Cleanse Toxins. We are also seeing some finesse conduits from Shadowlands carry on within this tree, providing buffs to Divine Steed like Cavalier or Seasoned Warhorse. While refurbished talents like this don't necessarily feel great, these abilities have often defined the Paladin kit and provide a few unique traits to the Protection Paladin. I don't mind the flexible option of being able to choose either Cleanse Toxins for a Dispel or Retribution Aura if you just want some more damage, or even things like Seal of the Templar. So I've been building out my tree like this. Freedom, Hammer of Wrath, Divine Steed, Blinding Light for group CC, then I pick up Double Fist of Justice and then Greater Judgment. This part of the tree is pretty annoying because it's not really great having to spend 2 points into Fist of Justice if I can be honest. Regardless, this does leave us 1 point to either gain a little bit more mobility or for having a Dispel. Not all dungeons or group comps will require having a Dispel, so let's just grab Steed in this example. Now that we have access to the second tier, we can actually pick up some stable abilities. Let me first talk about what talents that I've been playing, and then I'm going to talk about some few issues that I've run into personally with the tree, if I may be so bold. For Mythic Plus, I've been grabbing Avenging Wrath right away, well, because duh. I will want to have access to all 3 capstone areas as well, so I need to spread out my points slightly. With this build, I find myself choosing between Blessing of Protection or Sacrifice. There are arguments to be made for either, but in this case specifically, I want to actually just access both the center and the right side of the tree, so I'm going to be choosing Blessing of Protection and then the amplified node of the improved Bob. Lastly, we're going to pick up Unbreakable Spirit cooldown reduction on our major defensives like Ardent Defender, Divine Shield, and Lay on Hands. For Mythic Plus specifically, Rebuke is probably a must take. Then I've personally been grabbing Double Seal of Reprisal, but this is actually a 2-point node that you can actually put elsewhere if you would like, so it doesn't really block the rest of the tree. Just an option, you can always throw this into Hand of Sacrifice. Now with 5 points needing to spend, we're actually going to just beeline it right for Dusk and Dawn, which is going to be one of the capstones. So this will see us taking Holy Aegis, Judgment of Light, and then After Image. Once again, we have 1 point remaining to unlock the third tier, and I like to view this as a utility option. So we can either play Cleanse Toxins, Hand of Sacrifice if we didn't already make that trade, or turn evil, I guess. You can also look towards more group healing with Golden Path or increased damage with Incandescence or Touch of Light. If I'm being honest though, this choice node is pretty garbage if you're comparing it to having more utility. So in this case, we're going to actually just choose Cleanse Toxins and move on. And now that we have access to our last tier of the talent tree, it's possible to snatch up all 3 capstones if desired. I will talk about how you can do that shortly, but I want to explain why I don't choose all 3 capstones. First and foremost, we are going to target Dusk and Dawn along with Seal of Order. I think these talents are pretty much the heart and soul of what is making Protection Paladin really enjoyable to play for me. In order to do that, we need to sink 2 points into Aspiration of Divinity, and then we can grab the OD&D and Seal of Order. With that finished up, we now have an easy 7 more points to spend, and personally, I really like Divine Purpose. It adds a little bit of leeway into the rotation with free procs of Shield of the Righteous and Word of Glory, and these also count towards Holy Power spending reduction talents that we're going to see in the Spec tree in a little bit. I've seen builds that avoid this talent, and I just want to say that's completely up to you. Without it, the class becomes completely predictable, with the reward being an extra point to put elsewhere into the tree, like CC or healing or maybe the extra capstone if desired. In this example though, for my build, we are going to pick up Divine Purpose. Then following that, I want to grab Seal of Alacrity and then Sanctified Wrath. With more item level once we're geared, it's possible to trade out Alacrity for Might, but 4% haste early game is just too juicy to really pass up. Lastly, we're going to actually finish the tree off with Obduracy? Yeah, I guess that's how you say it. And then Seal of the Crusader. Really quick though, I do want to talk about a few issues that I have with the tree and hint on some possible changes if we need for specific situations. First, like I mentioned previously, you can always trade out Alacrity for Might if you want a slight change up in the bottom of the tree, while still having access to Sanctified Wrath Capstone. If you want to play all 3 capstones though, the best way, if not really the only way to do that, is by dropping Divine Purpose. The benefit to that is actually you're giving Avenging Wrath a little bit longer window of activity, but the downside is that the free procs of your spenders will typically provide cooldown reduction talents from the Spec tree. So, pick your poison. I've also seen some players not play into Seal of Order. I think early into endgame this is not the greatest choice. I think you need it, but that's just kind of my opinion. I just think at early endgame, I think while we lack a lot of, those higher levels of secondary stats, we're going to see a world where we're probably going to play this. But I do also see a world where when we have higher secondary stats, once we're Mythic geared from Raid or from Mythic Plus, you'll actually achieve your haste break points where you might not actually need this anymore. But personally, I really like the increased recovery rate, armor, and damage by maintaining the Dusk and Dawn buff. I've also heard that there's a lot of frustration with the class tree for Paladin, and I can definitely see some pain points, but overall I think the tree is pretty solid. But keep in mind, I'm always looking at these trees with Druid in the back of my mind. The second tier talents are pretty underwhelming to me. While I do find that there are some fitting abilities near the top and some pretty powerful options near the bottom of the tree, you have to work through pretty poor talents to get there, like Hallowed Ground or Seal of Mercy or Touch of Light choice node. I find that the pathing to the bottom of the tree is pretty direct, which can seem like a good or bad thing depending on how you want to look at it. With a little choice, the talent tree feels mundane and almost useless, as if we just had a normal kit. But feel free to disagree with me in the comments below. Let's move on to the Spec tree, where things become a little bit more interesting in concordance with our class tree. The Spec tree for Paladin seems to be in a much better state than the class tree, but honestly, I think out of all 3 Paladin specializations, this tree complements the class tree the most, which is probably the reason why I don't think the class tree is total ass. Let's break down the build that I've been running and slaying with in keys. The Spec tree comparatively starts off way better than most. While we do need to pick up some old abilities and passives, it's nice seeing some old competitive choices now being split and both being able to be obtained. For example, things like Holy Shield, Blessed Hammer, and Redoubt were all on a talent row. To start off the tree, we're actually going to be taking the following: Avenger Shield, Blessed Hammer, Grand Crusader, Holy Shield, Ardent Defender, Inspiring Vanguard, Inner Light, and then Shining Light. Now quickly for context, Holy Shield, while nerfed, is still insanely useful in Mythic Plus content. Also, while Redoubt is pretty useful and fairly strong, I find that it crutches the Paladin slightly on Shield of the Righteous, and while in most dungeon environments 80% uptime is obtainable on Solder, you don't fall over immediately while playing Inner Light because it provides a fair bit of block, which then feeds actually back into Holy Shield a bit. This choice node is honestly pretty flexible though, and also grants access to Shining Light, so play what you want. Now, lastly, even though we have unlocked the second tier, I will be putting 1 extra point into Consecration of Flame because I'm going to need access to this area of the tree in the next tier. There are a lot of solid choices though throughout the second tier of this tree, and it can definitely be flexible in a variety of PvE content from certain raid bosses to certain dungeons. But my general build looks like this. First off, we're going to actually send points into Bulwark of Order, Tears Enforcer, and Resolute Defender on the left side of the tree. They are extremely useful for both damage, sustain, and cooldown reduction. Normally, I think Sentinel would be the play in the center, but there are still some issues with Sentinel interacting with other talents that provide cooldown reduction to Avenging Wrath, since Sentinel replaces Avenging Wrath. Assuming it is a bug and not working as intended, this is what we would play, but for now, we've been running Might. This then gives us access to our 3rd damage reduction cooldown, Guardian of Ancient Kings. My goal with this tree is to access actually all 3 capstones, have synergy with the class tree, and also bolster our tier set once we have it. So my last 4 points have been like this: Strength in Adversity, Strength of Conviction, and then Crusader's Judgment. Having the increased parry chance, we'll have multiple synergies with the class and the tier set. Strength of Conviction, while it does put a pretty heavy emphasis on Consecration, I think provides a pretty valuable damage and healing increase. And then lastly, Crusader's Judgment just gives us way more holy power generation with increased casts of Judgment, which also will grant more, general group healing with Judgment of the Light from our class tree, as long as you're doing meaningful tab targeting. And then the last tier is just Chef's Kiss, pure beaut. First and foremost, Eye of Tyr is probably a must-take, especially with Blizzard's new design philosophy with the class leaning away from Shield of the Righteous. The idea now is to comfortably rotate your defensive cooldowns, and Eye of Tyr is a perfect tool for that being on a short cooldown. Bulwark of Righteous Fury was a staple of Shadowlands, and I'm glad to see it return. Now that it's no longer bugged, Protection Paladins have been just doing outrageous damage in dungeons. And then the idea with the rest of the tree is to hit all of our capstones, though there are times where you'll actually want to trade some points around, which I'll get to in a bit. For my build specifically though, I think in Mythic Plus, Divine Toll is a must, and luckily enough, the best way to get there is actually through Righteous Protector, which provides cooldown reduction to not only Wings, but also to Guardian of Ancient Kings. But for flavor, I've actually been utilizing the Divine Resonance capstone. While it doesn't generate Holy Power anymore, it does provide us with sustained amplified shielded righteous damage through Bulwark, and on top of that, it also provides increased sustained threat and damage from our Tears and Force Turn talent, on top of just free interrupts every 5 seconds. This would be an easy trade-off if we wanted, though, to pick up a different talent choice node somewhere else. Lastly, we're going to shoot just right for Moment of Glory through Soaring Shield and Feren Marcus's Fervor. While it's nice having access to all 3 capstones, in higher level content, a tank's defenses are extremely important. Pseudo-cheat deaths like Gift of the Golden Valkyr are really important, though this talent node is odd because the second point placed here is practically useless because the first point is really where you're getting the primary effect of the sub 30% health drop. You can drop Resonance or Moment of Glory for this choice if desired. I actually was previously playing without Moment of Glory and choosing to talent 1 point into the gift, then the other 2 points go into Bastion of Light for a pretty sizable defensive, and a way to easily catch up if you fall behind on Blessing of Dusk and Dawn. And then the final point will go into things like Final Stand, allowing you to bubble pretty aggressively without worrying about threat. Even with Necrotic being gone, a tank immunity on a 3-ish minute cooldown is just insane. It can also play pretty well with Blessing of Sacrifice if you choose it in your class tree, which can make the Paladin feel just as, if not more useful in a group composition. Now, while I mostly focus on my personal choices, there are some pretty cool choices left in the tree, like Uther's Council or Light of the Titans and Hand of the Protector. While I have a few issues with how many points are needed to actually spend to access those nodes, we can save that just for another video. Anyways, I've been having a lot of fun playing Protection Paladin the last 2 months on beta. While this is one of the heavier reworked tanks, unlike Warrior going into Shadowlands, the Paladin feels incredibly smooth, fun, and honestly sturdier than ever when it comes to Mythic Plus. Let me know what you guys think down below. While I can't say for sure if this is going to be the best tank, I can definitely say that it's a dark horse and has the potential to be extremely competitive come Season 1 of Dragonflight. Huge shout out though to all my patrons who give their actual dollars and dimes to support me. Without you, there'd be much less of whatever you call this. Hope you guys are staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.